my friends, Lynn's here from Lynn's Handmade Designs. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you are looking for the video on how to make your own Rayna sling, you're kind of in the right place. Wrong video. You're going to want to go back to the video posted just before this called How to Make Your Own Rayna Sling, and that's going to walk you through step by step. That's not this video today. Today's video is what people have been begging me for and waiting for, and that's to make your own leather Rayna. Going over how to quilt leather and how to work with metal zipper tape. If that's what you're looking for, you're in the right place. I mentioned if you were looking for the video on how to make the Rayna sling step by step, watch the previous video, and I'm really hoping that you already did that because this is just going over strictly the mods I'm using for leather. So any step that I change from the written instructions to accommodate leather, that's what I'm going over today. I'm also going to kind of touch very high level, touching the tip of the iceberg on the leather discussion about those need to know details if you are brand new to leather, because that's the assumption I'm making today. I don't think people who have been spending their whole life doing leather work are looking for tips on how to make Rayna and leather. You already know that. This is for those newbies. Those are the ones that are just dabbling in leather and wanting to get better at it. But if you have no need for any of this information and you want to just skip straight to watching how the Rayna is being made in leather, I totally get it. I did type up all the timestamps in the description box below, and that is also where I'll be linking to the products and stuff that I've been discussing. My personal preference for choosing leather is to go buy it in person, and I am lucky enough that I have a Tandy Leather local to me, so I can unroll the hides, take a look at it, see if there's any imperfections and giant holes or how thick it is, and feel the temper of the hide. I understand not everybody has something near them. If you do, I would encourage you to go get your leather that way. But if you're forced to buy online, there are some terms that you really should know and understand what you're looking for before you hit that checkout. The first thing I want to discuss is the different grades of leather. They typically go in the best, highest quality on down to the crud. So the first one is full grain. That is the best quality. It's the most expensive, and it is the most durable. So if you see a product that says full grain leather, you know they're using a good quality product. Next would be top grain. So typically they kind of buff out any of those imperfections on that top layer so it's more consistent throughout. It's still very high quality. You see something with top grain, we're still working with pretty decent leather here. Third would be split grain leather, also known as genuine leather. And I know that's going to come as a shock to some of you guys because in our industry, we say, oh, it's genuine leather. Like, buy my stuff, it's high quality. I think we use that because we're trying to say that it's not faux leather, it's not a vegan vinyl option, it's actual leather, but it's actually the lower bottom quality leathers because now they're removing all those top layers. They tend to add like an embossing or a coating to make it look more like a full grain leather. It is a great entry level leather as far as price point goes if you're looking to dabble and get experience in it before you spend the big bucks and buy a full grain hide. Still decent quality, just kind of will be inconsistent as far as the results that it will give you. And then the last one is bonded leather, and those are typically like leather shavings or scraps that gets mixed in with different types of adhesive and then created into a leather. They'll add different types of toppings on that to make it look like a solid fake leather, but it still is considered leather because it's got leather scraps in it. But that's the one that's most likely to tear or peel or just break down over time. So if you're in the business of bag making, that bonded leather is something you should definitely steer clear of. So another term you might hear a lot is temper. So what the heck is temper? Temper is basically its hand feel, how it feels in your hand. Is it soft and squishy? Is it firm? The thickness of the leather doesn't necessarily correlate with the temper either. You can have a really thin leather with a firm temper, and you can have a thicker leather with a soft, squishy temper. So I do have two examples right here. This one is about the same thickness as this one, but it's got that shaggy kind of back flesh side, so it looks a little bit thicker. But as you can see, this one is soft and squishy. It's got a softer temper, and it does not hold its shape. This one has no stretch, and it holds its shape really well. So this has a firmer temper. This type of leather is excellent for things like wallets, where you're cutting really fine lines and you don't want it to stretch as you're cutting it. This one would be great for like a hobo, a slouchy hobo style bag. The thing that I want to bring to your attention though is if it's thicker a softer temper, it may just add more weight to your project than structure. So this type of leather, if you're going to use it for like a tote, you're going to have to stabilize the heck out of it. The other thing I really like about leather is a lot of times I don't have to add any type of interfacing or stabilizer. It's kind of cut and go if you choose the right leather. But I do get asked a lot, hey, can you add interfacing or stabilizer to leathers? Absolutely. There are a few things to consider when you do so, and that is the type of stabilization you're looking for, the type of structure, and what method you're going to add that stabilizer to your leather. So I have a few pieces cut out in front of me I'd like to discuss with you. So what we are most familiar probably in the bag making world is the Decaville Light and Decaville Heavy. You can see this is very, very stiff. This is thin. This added to our fabrics gives it kind of a leather-like feel. It adds a lot of structure. This one is much heavier. A lot of times you're seeing it more in the bottom base of the bags, but both of them can tend to crinkle if you're turning a bag right side out through a small opening. So these are stabilizers I prefer to use more if it's a drop-in lining or you're not turning it much or you have a really big opening to turn the bag through. Can you add these with heat? You can. I would never add water because that can cause leather to shrink up, but I would always recommend you cutting a swatch of your leather and a piece of this and test it out before you adhere it to any of your cutout bag pieces. I start slow, low heat, and check periodically. I would not use a heat press personally unless you have those settings fine-tuned, because the more pressure you add as you're applying your heat, the more you can change the leather. You can essentially emboss it with the imprint of your wool pressing mat or your iron cover, or if there's any pieces of thread or leather scraps underneath there and you're pressing heat, you can emboss that on the back of this piece, and you don't want to do that. These two are an adhesive backed stabilizer, and then this one, it also is adhesive backed, but this is a Selpa. And a Selpa, Bontex, they're just different names for stabilizers. They can either have the adhesive backing where you just stick it onto your project, or you would use a leather glue to the whole backside and adhere it to the wrong side of your leather. These are an adhesive foam. One is 1 millimeter closed cell foam. This one's 2 millimeter closed cell foam. This is much thicker. This is thinner. This is what we're going to be using for our leather Rayna today. Love the structure that it gives, and it turns well. I don't notice a whole lot of crinkles. This one, it being thicker, is something I would probably save more for the bottom base of a bag, or if I had a tote that I really needed a lot of structure to. The last thing I want to cover is how leather is described in a listing if you're ordering online. It's typically described in ounces. So how thick the leather is described in ounces. Sometimes they'll give millimeters as a cross-reference as well. I'm not terribly familiar with how thick a millimeter is, but I've gotten accustomed to understanding what my leathers are in ounces, how thick they are. As a home sewist, maybe not with an industrial sewing machine or a skiver. The skiver is what kind of shaves off that backing on the leather so that it thins the seam allowances. If you don't have a manual skiver or a bell skiver, you're going to want to stick with something that is low in ounces or small in millimeters, around 2 ounces. So if you're looking online and you see, oh, a beautiful leather, but it says 4 ounces, 5 ounces. Sometimes online supply shops will offer a splitting service, which means that they run the entire hide through a mechanical splitter and it shaves off the entire backside of that flesh side of the leather to make it thinner. Typically, that's a non-returnable item, so make sure that it is the right leather you want or you've ordered it before. It is a nice service that they offer. So if you don't have the skiver and you're sewing on a basic sewing machine or even an industrial sewing machine, you're probably going to stick around 2 ounces. The leather I'm using today for my Rayna is listed between 2.25 and 2.75 ounces, and I'm still skiving around the edges. So even though that is a pretty thin leather, I really want no bulk in the side seams where I already have made the Rayna. I know where those areas can be bulky. If you have a skiver, then the world is your oyster. You can truly buy any leather online and just hope for the best, knowing you can kind of skive down those seam allowances if they're too thick. Especially since I've already discussed that you can stabilize or add interfacing to these thin leathers If you don't have the skiver, that's the way to go. Always go low, and you can stabilize it as you need. The other thing to notice on a listing is it's sold in square footage. It's not, you know, vinyl rolls where it gives you a measurement. It's not sold by the yard. So that can be confusing as well. And how they calculate it is kind of mind-boggling to me. Again, it has to do with the square footage, like picture a square ruler, 12 by 12, kind of placed on the hide, and that's kind of how they get the number. But keep in mind, leather has a lot of waste. As you get towards the outer edges, it's got a lot of stretch, it's got a lot of imperfections, and it's parts you're probably not going to use in a lot of your projects. You're going to use the very center portion that has the most even, consistent width, not a lot of stretch. It probably looks the best. So when you're ordering leather, that's the other thing to kind of figure out is how many square feet I'm going to need. Alrighty, I think we're good on information overload for right now. Let's just get into it and let's make this bag. So I did mention that I'm going to be making my Rayna out of this full grain leather that I did get from Peggy Sue also. It's their Duchess line, which is a thinner version of their Chopper. So Chopper is thicker, it's a higher ounces. This one's not terribly thick, but like I said, I am going to go ahead and skive around the edges because I want to reduce bulk, especially in those side seams where the side wings are going. I did skive around that as well. And then we are going to use that 1mm adhesive foam. I'll just peel this off and add to the center backs of all these pieces. I've already got those cut out ready to go, but because my original Rayna was quilted, I'm going to show you how to do that too, because people literally want me to show them exactly how I made my first one. So I'm going to take a silver marking tool and draw out my grid lines that I'm going to quilt. Once I've got that drawn, then I'll go ahead and add the stabilizers to the back side. I just don't want my pen mark to be affected by the stabilizer right now. For my first leather Rayna, I did 1-inch grids, and I kind of went corner to corner on this back panel and the front panel. And then I did 1-inch gaps after that. I also went to the other corner to corner, and did 1-inch gaps, just like that. Now that I've got all my grid lines on, I'll go ahead and add the foam backing. I've decided not to quilt the top zipper panels. I didn't do it on my first one, and I mean, quilting is labor intensive, so I want to cut down time as it is, and I don't think it needs it. So I'm just going to center the foam right on this piece. Alrighty, now we're going to go to the sewing machine and quilt our grid lines. For this next step, I have increased my stitch length so that it's not really tight when we're sewing with leather. The tighter the stitches, the more likely it is to perforate and tear over time. So increase your stitch length for that. I've also installed a leather needle in size 18. Really, you want the smallest leather needle that your thread size can handle, because a leather needle is designed to kind of cut through the leather versus a standard needle that's kind of pushing through the fibers of fabric. So the bigger the needle you have, the bigger those cut marks you're gonna see. But if you go too small and you're getting skip stitches, you're gonna wanna increase your needle size. So my preference for my Tex 70 or Tex 80 bonded poly thread is a size 18 needle. Now that we've quilted our grid lines on, I'm just taking some water in a spray bottle and I'll rub it down with an old rag to remove that silver marking pen. Now this is the 1mm foam, so it's not very lofty. Depending on how much loft your foam has, your panels could shrink in size. So you just want to keep that in mind if you're using a pretty thick foam. I think the By Annie stuff, it's like a 1/4 inch. I do believe your panels would shrink if you were using that type of foam. So sometimes you might want to overcut your piece, quilt it, and then cut it down to size, and just still try to be mindful of keeping the foam out of your seam allowance. But I did not overcut these pieces because, again, there's not very much loft in the foam that I used. Alrighty, so now I still need to add the foam pieces to our zipper panels. And because we are trimming down the width of the zipper panels and some of the height so that it's a perfect match to the gusset, I cut this foam only 3/4 inches high, and I'm just gonna center it within this the width here, but I'm gonna bring it closer to one edge over the other. The side that I'm gonna install the zipper on, I'm gonna give myself about 3/8 inch and position it closer to that edge. So if my zipper's installed, it's gonna be here. This has got a bigger gap because this is where I'm gonna trim from after the zipper install. I'm gonna do the same thing on this piece. Alrighty. Moving along to our side wings, I did mention how I skived the backside because I really do want to reduce bulk as I sew this and turn it right side out. I've seen people make their leather Raynas already before this video, and some are just leaving the edges raw because it's too bulky. That is an option as well, but you will need to trim this piece down 3/8 inch if you're leaving the edge raw. So it would need to be 3/8 inch shorter than it is because you need to account for that seam allowance. Otherwise it's going to be too tall to add to that back panel. I went ahead and sewed this off camera. So we do need to trim down the seam allowance, cutting off this corner here. Cutting off this corner here. I'm cutting notches into this curved portion. Right. And turn it right side out. I do have a screwdriver handy so I can push these corners out as best as I can. But you can see by skiving those edges, it dramatically reduced the bulk for this. But I still have my handy dandy hammer here, my mallet. So I still want to whack those pretty well before I top stitch. And just like our fabric version, we're going to go ahead and top stitch an 1/8 inch around the edge and repeat a 1/4 inch below that. So far this is exact construction as we do any other material. Just trimming off these corners and then fold corner to corner to add our center marks. And set aside. We will be using metal zipper tape by the yard for this tutorial today. So the only difference between metal and our nylon coil that we're used to is that you don't typically want to sew through these metal teeth. Now my sister showed me a Rayna she made the other day and she said she didn't have the tool to remove those, so she just carefully hand cranked over these. Do that at your own risk, because it's very easy to snap a needle or to shred your thread as you're kind of going in between the teeth. So for metal zipper by the yards, we're going to be using a tool called zipper nippers, and this allows me to pull off those teeth to keep them out of our seam allowance. We're going to do that in a later step. You don't need any fancy tools to cut this down. You just don't want to grab your favorite sharp scissors, because you do need to cut to length and you have to kind of just cut in between the teeth, and sometimes your blade actually kind of catches the teeth and you don't want to dull your good scissors. So grab your not the best scissors and then cut your zipper down to length in between the metal teeth. Moving along to the front zipper install. Now I did oversize cut this so that it will extend beyond our panel just like we do with our nylon coil. And because we're going to trim down the main zipper panel, I'm just going to do it the same exact install to show you how to do both. Otherwise, you would cut your zipper exactly the width here. But again, anytime I've sewn two pieces together, sometimes I'm a little off, even though I have the best intentions and I'm trying to be precise. So we're going to oversize cut it. We're going to install this zipper just like we do the normal one, and then I will show you how to remove the teeth after that. So far up to the step, it should feel mighty familiar. So we're going to go ahead and now trim this so the zipper tape is flush with the edges. So I grabbed my not so great scissors because I don't want to use my favorite, and I'm going to just kind of cut in between those teeth. Okay, so now because our seam allowance is 3/8 inch, I'm going to take my ruler and a marking pen, measure in on my leather 3/8 inch. I'm just going to kind of draw a line or a dot right there on both sides. Just like that. Now, this is the amount of teeth I need to remove, so we're not in our needle path when we sew it on. So I have to separate my zipper just like this. Grab our little zipper nippers, and we're going to remove the amount of teeth to that 3/8 inch line. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 takes me to the 3/8 inch line. Repeat on the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just like that. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it looks like I need a little bit more on this side. So I'm gonna go 5. That takes me to the line. 1, 2, 3, 4, double check, and 4 was on that side. Okay, so now I'm going to grab my lighter and singe these so that they don't continue to fray, and then I can add my zipper pull. What I'm going to do is I'm going to thread it on from one side and pull it off so that the edges are joined again, and then I'll thread it back on just like we do with our nylon coil, and we'll leave it in the middle. Closed it. Now, because we're not modifying the interior in any way, I already did the mesh pocket just as it is written in the instructions off camera, so that's ready to go. But before we sandwich our liners with our exteriors, if you're going to add your bag tag, you want to do that now. Last time on my leather one, I put it roughly on the front in the corner. You just need to go at least 1 inch up and at least 1 inch over. So but for this one, I think I'm just going to go ahead and put it on the lower back. And I'm just going to kind of center it in between my stitching lines. I obviously don't want to punch holes in my stitching lines. And then I'll install my name tag right there. Now we can sandwich the back main with its liner. So we want wrong sides together, aligning all those edges and clip in place. We got our side wings here. We're going to line up those center marks along the center marks here. Clip that. And clip that. Okay, so back. So you should see a pretty side of your liner on the wrong side, and then your back is this way. Do the same thing with our front main body. So I want these wrong sides facing, and then we're going to flip them over together. So this is a right side that will be seen on the inside of your pocket when you unzip it, and then you flip it over. You should see your bottom pocket towards the bottom. Go ahead and clip and align all edges. Go ahead and baste them all as one, both your front and your back, and we'll move on to our top zipper panel. Those are both basted as one, so we can set those aside. And now we can go ahead and do our main zipper install. We are doing it the same exact way as it is written, and I showed you in the other video. So go ahead and attach your zipper to your zipper panels, and we'll trim it down together. I have already off camera trimmed it to the correct height. Now we need to trim it down to exactly 14 inches. So I did draw my lines, and I've got my not so great scissors, but sharp enough to cut through leather and this tape here. Here we go. So now it's the right width. And I'm going to add 2 different pulls. I'm going to do a double pull, but otherwise, if you were going to open it or do it as written and it opens left to right, we thread it on from the right hand side, but we're going to thread our zipper pulls on from each side, but we still have to remove these teeth. So I'm going to grab that marking pen and ruler again and measure the 3/8 inch and put that dot on my line. And just like with our other zipper, we're going to separate it a little bit and remove those teeth. One, 2, 3, 4. My line's already smeared. I'm going to take a 5th here. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. Looks good on that end. Repeat with this side. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And thread your pull on from each side or from the right hand so it opens left to right, or your preference. Since I threaded a zipper pull from each side, I didn't have to thread it on, run it off to close the tape, and rethread it because they both essentially closed each end. Now, I'm not putting starts and stops on the beginning and end of my zippers, but they do sell those. I also have a video, a YouTube video I've already done kind of showing how to do that. But just real quick, I want to show you what I mean by these starts and stops. This stopper, I'm a big fan of. It kind of is an X shape. That goes like, it just threads right on both sides, just like that. And you would clamp it shut with some pliers. And then the opposite end has those two little prongs, just like this. So this would go on one side of your teeth like this, and you would crimp it shut, and you would do one on the opposite side. But as you can see, that definitely shortens the seam allowance here. So you would need to pluck more teeth in order to add the stoppers. And one, I don't have these stoppers in gold, so that's one reason why I'm not doing it, but also because I plan to use this front pocket for my phone. I need this pocket to open as wide as possible, so I didn't want to put stoppers here that would take this opening and make it much shorter. Personal preference. But like I said, most places that sell metal zipper by the yard do sell these starters and these stoppers. So if you want to learn it's installed, I do have another YouTube video, which I will link again in the description box below. Here you can see with the one side of the gusset added, we have a little bitty gap so I didn't catch the teeth in my needle path at all. We do not want a huge gap here. So if you're like petrified of your needle hitting this metal teeth, that you take too many teeth and you have a gap here, you're going to need to add some sort of stopper, because when you unzip your bag and you come there, if your pull comes off those teeth, you're going to have a hard time and you're going to need to reseat it every single time. So do not leave a huge gap here. You really only want to remove the teeth that are absolutely necessary. And here's the other side. All right, we're going to go ahead and attach our binding strips off camera. That's unchanged. I'm going to attach it to the front main body so you can see the zipper ends on that, and then we're going to finish up the bag. Front is attached. I have not trimmed anything. I've just removed staples. So we're going to go ahead and take a peek at that zipper and how it's looking so far. Make sure we didn't get any pleats. All right, so here you can see we've come pretty close to the edge. We just didn't catch the teeth in our seam, which is amazing. And same thing over here. So just again, make sure there's not a huge gap, that when you pull your zipper, you're not constantly trying to get it back on track because you left too big of a hole and took too many teeth. All right, looking good. Let's add the back. This is my favorite part, when we are literally almost done. Now we just turn it out. Moment of truth. Check out our handiwork. Okay, she looks great. Just add the D-rings the same exact way and add our strap, and we are done. D-ring connectors are on. I had polled you guys in my stories on social media when I was prepping for this video and asked you which webbing should use for the strap. And once you guys know it, it was exactly 50-50. So naturally, since it was up to me, I chose something completely different. But that's the beauty of a removable strap. We can choose and we can change our mind anytime we want. Did it! Good job, guys. So thanks again for joining me today. I hope that this video gives you the confidence to jump in and start sewing with leather. Basically, the takeaway is if you don't have an industrial sewing machine and you want to start sewing with leather, go lighter. Buy that thinner leather. You can always add stabilizer, keeping it out of the seam allowance, and then get your feet wet that way. When you find out you love leather, as I do, you invest in those stronger, beefier machines like the industrial walking foot or a leather skiver. But thanks again for watching. I hope you have a great day. That smells good.